So hi, Jill Fraser here, and today's video is going to be something of perhaps a little downer. And it started me thinking after the recent events of the Humboldt hockey team being so many members losing their lives in an accident. And it's one of those things where you often wonder how people cope with such sudden, unexpected, seemingly senseless loss. So I recently moved to a small town in Nova Scotia called Westville. And Westville has a history which I was unaware of at the time, but there's a park just down the road from me called the Acadia Park. And it apparently used to be a mine long time ago. But there are two major incidences I want to discuss today. And at this Acadia Park, there's a memorial which I can walk to, and I walk my dog around it, and I've taken some pictures that I'd like to show you. And the memorial is based on a what was called the Drummond mine explosion. And this occurred way back in 1873, which seems a lifetime for those of us now in the 2000s, but it's still a vivid memory on a lot of people's minds because of the history. Now, the Drummond mine, Acadia Park, as I mentioned, used to be a mine, and what they've done is they've plowed it over and they've what's commonly known as blocked the any kind of sense of mining. Nothing can be done on this land. My guess is there's probably 50 to 75 acres of land that cannot be used for homes or building or anything like that, because there are still remains of men underneath the ground due to the explosions. It was just unsafe for people to recover them. And there were approximately 70 lives lost in this, which, when you're talking small towns, it is an absolute disaster. So these monument pictures that I'm going to show you was basically designed and built as a memory to these miners. And as you can see from the picture of the Stoic monument, basically the miner has his lunch bag, which is very small, and then a lantern. And that was their equipment. A little cap, boots, and that was it. That's what they had in those days. And they would trust their fellow miners that everything was going to be okay. Now, this monument technically was built in 1891, which is incredible in itself that it still exists. And originally, underneath that miner that was on the previous picture, there were these names etched in on the four sides. And these names all depicted people who had lost their lives. Now, what has gone up since are these other monuments, which basically depict all 70 miners, the names of all 70 miners that lost their lives. And you go through the names, and I actually recognize a few names, family names, simply because of my last name. And it really kind of resonates with me as to the immense loss that this had. And if you look at this picture from the back, you'll see the field is very flat. So everything with this coal mining was very sparse, and it's kind of sad when you see what the potential probably was and how busy everything was and how it was just raised down. So you often think of, okay, what has happened? Well, in Pictou County, which is basically kind of the northeast part of the province, they decided that they would start another mining project, and it technically opened in 1991, and needless to say, it closed in 1992. And that really hits home, because I kind of go, this mine was only up for 1 year. Why? And the reason being is that the company that worked on this mine decided that they would circumvent instructions. They were allowed to do I guess what was apparently a process of drilling through the bedrock with dangerous techniques, but decided that they were told or instructed that they could only use these techniques until they were ready to mine. And then after that point, once they were ready to mine, they had to go back to proper regulations. Which in itself, you kind of go, wow, they were already working dangerously. Now, what the people failed to do was they failed to go back to proper mining protocol. So now they're still continuing to work with dangerous procedures. Unfortunately, they had been informed, the authorities had been informed that things weren't being done correctly, but it was glossed over. And as a result, 26 men lost their lives. And these 26 men, in again, a very, very small town, you kind of lost their lives because of people not wanting to follow regulations. And that in itself is sad. And these families have never forgotten. Now, the ironic thing is, the mine is where I live, but the memorial is in a town beside me, in New Glasgow. The memorial that I was at and showed you the previous pictures was from another mine where the 70 people lost their lives. Now, these 26 men lost their lives in a mine that was only open 1 year. 1 year, guys. Why? 1990. It wasn't that long ago. This wasn't the 1800s where people didn't know better. These people knew better, and that's why people were so upset. And I recently talked to an individual who lost her father, and the sad part is she could remember as a child walking the fields to greet her father after a shift and going through his lunch bucket to see what he hadn't eaten so they could eat some of that. So that's the sad part. When you hear the turmoil of the families, and this is what brings me back to the bus crash. It's not just the fact, that 16 people lost their lives. It's the fact that these 16 people didn't need to lose their lives. And that these 16 people all had families and all had friends. And it wasn't just 16 people, it was 50 people, it was 100 people, it was 1,000 people all affected by this. And as I say, it just, when I walk through this park now with my dog and I look at the memorial and I think of the 70 names on those plaques, and I think of the time frame that it was so rare that people really knew what was going on. And then I think of the 26 people that lost their lives, and that should never have happened. Not the way it happened anyways. That should never have happened. And that's why people got so angry over this. Anyways, that's it for today. Thanks.